I believe we have Santos now.
Okay.
Yep. Howdy, guys.
Oh, yay.
Hello, Santos.
Hello, I'm so excited. I can't wait.
Welcome.
Yep. Thanks, guys. How's everyone?
Wonderful.
Very well.
Doing very well.
Yeah. Great.
Looking forward to hear
Wonderful.
all
All
about.
right. Well, yeah. Look, we can do astrology and the houses, like I said last week. Unless anyone has some other preferences, I've still got more to finish off on Atum and atomic theology because that's a pretty important subject. But unless any changes, we can do the astrology and the houses. What do you think there, Ruth?
Oops, sorry,
Ruth, are you
Santos.
there?
Yes, I'm here now. Sorry, I was muted and I could not get quick enough. Yes, perfect, Santos. This is your show. You do whatever you feel is the right, information. That's your platform here. So beautiful. I'm looking forward to it. That's all I know.
Okay. All right. Well, look. Let's do the astrology and the houses then, because I do get a lot of people asking, how to read the chart. Well, this will be the basics for reading the chart, and anyone can do this, and anyone can listen to this archive, and they can get plenty of basics to begin their chart reading understanding. So let's call it then astrology and the houses, the 12 houses. What I thought we might do is we might look up the chart of someone famous every time we do this. And today, for some reason, I picked the chart of Casanova. Okay, so Giacomo Casanova. So if you have a browser open, let's do the chart of a very, very famous Venetian person who lived a couple hundred years ago, and that is Giacomo Casanova. Now let's get the spelling of that. Giacomo. Someone's got their keyboards firing away in the background there. And Casanova is Casanova. All right, and so what'll happen is if you put in his name and birth chart next to it, so Giacomo Casanova, birth chart, and what you'll do is, I think the best one is the Astro Theme. So you'll see an Astro Theme website. There's probably about 6 or 7 different versions of Casanova's birth chart there, but I think the Astro Theme ones are the best. Okay, so if you click on that, and what we'll have then is we'll have someone's chart to look at, and it's best to examine the chart of famous people because you know a lot about their public life, so you know some of their details that should be obvious in their charts. Okay, so. And it's one of the best ways of learning astrology. So hopefully everybody's got that one up. And what you'll see there is Giacomo was born on the 2nd of April, so Arian. You'll see the sun is in Aries. You'll see a moon in Sagittarius in the 2nd house. And you'll see an ascendant in Scorpio. Okay, so very, very interesting. Casanova's birth chart reveals quite a bit about this character, actually. You'll be surprised. So, now what you'll notice is where you start the chart reading is at the left where you see the letters AC. That's the ascendant. That's the rising sign in the east. So, although Casanova was born at 8 p.m., the sun is clearly below the horizon. The horizon is horizontal in the circle, so and it separates 180 degrees above, 180 degrees below. So it's all formatted correctly, astrology. And so that line across from the ascendant to the other side's called the descendant. Directly opposite the AC is the descendant, the DC. Okay, now these are the two letters, A and D, for the word Adam. And then you'll notice at the top of the chart, you'll see an MC. Well, that's the middle heaven, but that line going straight through there to the bottom, that's called the meridian. So ascendant, descendant, meridian is the name Adam. So both in astrology and both in astronomy, Adam or atom is on the ecliptic. It always is. Okay, now this is a fact brought out by the 3rd century Greek philosopher Zosimos. He said if you're looking for Adam, you'll see him on the ecliptic. The ascendant is his letter A, the descendant on the opposite side is D, and the meridian is M, and that's Adam. That's 1700 years ago. And so these 4 points that I've just highlighted, these are called the cardines, the angles. They are the 4 most prominent points in astrology, starting with the ascendant and going clockwise to the MC, then to the DC, and then the bottom one is the IC. Very important that you understand this before we go any further. Those 4 angles, that's where most of the information in astrology is, in those houses. And that is the 1st house, the AC, the 10th house, the MC, the 7th house, the DC, and the 4th house, the IMC. Okay? So the ascendant is over there at 9 o'clock. The MC is at the top at 12 o'clock. Let's look at it at like a 12-hour clock, okay? And then the DC is at 3 o'clock, and the IMC is at 6 o'clock. And those 4 angles, they correspond to the cardinal points. They are the cardines in house astrology, okay? The cardines, or the angles, they are the angular houses. And they are the most important. That's where you want most of your planets to be, because there they have the most strength. The angular signs hold about 40 to 50% of the total strength of the ecliptic, and especially the ascendant and the MC. Between the 2 of them, that's about a quarter of the strength of the chart is in those 2 houses. Most astrologers, they get 50% of their reading from the 1st house and the 10th house, the ascendant and the MC. Because the ascendant is dealing with the individual, the house is dealing with the individual's career path. So the start of life and the end of life are considered in just those 2 houses, the 1st and the 10th. And they are the most rewarding, really. They give some of the best treasures in the chart and the best rewards. Okay? Regardless of whether there are planets in those houses or not. So let's have a look at the houses there. So you start at the left at 9 o'clock and you see the ascendant. That's the horizon in the east. So Scorpio was rising when Casanova was born in Venice 200 years ago, and the sun was just below the horizon, just set. On the other side, on the opposite side, you see the sun has just set. It's in the 6th house, and Scorpio is rising. And so roughly the first house should correspond with 30 degrees. If it's longer or shorter, the reason being is because you're using a Placidus system, not an equal house system. So the houses don't always correspond to the signs in length. For instance, have a look at the second house in Casanova's chart. You'll see that it's about 34 degrees long along the ecliptic, and it's slightly bigger than Sagittarius, which is occupying the second house. Okay, so you see there, that's because we're using the Placidus system, and the Placidus system accounts for refraction of the horizons. You might, for all the keen astrologers there listening, you might want to study refraction of the horizon, because when you're looking at the horizon, the light causes refraction, and you see, so the ecliptic stretched or shortened, depending where you are living on the planet. And so the Placidus, Domingo Placidus, devised a system that would accommodate that refraction. And so the houses were lengthened or shortened to accommodate the refraction. But if you were to use an equal house system or whole house system, you wouldn't need to worry about this discrepancy. All of the houses would be exactly 30 degrees along the ecliptic. Okay? But here we are, we're using a Placidus astrological system. So the houses, they're not all equal. Very important to understand that. So starting at 9 o'clock, below the horizon, that's the first sign, the first house. Okay? Then continuing on anti-clockwise, you see the second house where the moon is, and then the third house. That's the first quadrant. Usually occupies 90 degrees of ecliptic. And that quadrant there, those are the first signs that will come up in the chart, because they're all rising and they're all traveling clockwise, all the signs. So signs are going around clockwise, but the houses are always there, stable in that position. They never change. The first house is always below the horizon there between 8 o'clock and 9 o'clock. And that never changes. The houses never change, whilst the signs are going around clockwise. Every 2 hours, one sign. Every 2 hours, one sign. Okay, so the signs are shifting through the houses. Okay, now, so between 9 o'clock and 6 o'clock, going anti-clockwise, we've just done the first three houses. And the first house, as I said, after those bold cusps of the angles, those are called angular houses. Okay, the second house, that's called a succedent house. And then the third one is called a cadent. And this repeats all the way around. Okay, so angular, succedent, cadent. Angular, succedent, cadent. These correspond with cardinal fixed mutable in the sign system. So the house system is exactly the same as the sign system. All the cardinal signs on the tropical points, they are the strongest. The same thing happens with the house system. The first angles are always the strongest, and they're called angular. Okay? So the first house is angular, second house is succedent because it follows the first, and the third one is cadent. Cadent means weak, fallen. Just like mutable means weak and changeable and mutable and mixture of energies. So are the cadent signs. You don't want planets in your cadent signs. As much as possible, hopefully your planets will avoid the cadent signs, especially the 6th and the 12th, which are the weakest of all the houses. You really don't want, according to Firmicus Maternus, you don't want any planets in the 6th or the 12th house, because they can bring a lot of trouble. He said, pray that the native does not have any planets in the 6th or the 12th. And he also said the 8th and the 2nd. We'll get to that later, and we'll show you, we'll explain which are the weak houses and which are the strong ones. Already I've said the angular ones, that's where you want all your planets to be. And they're easy to find in all astrological systems because there will be 4 bold cusps. You see where the ascendant is? That arrow is very bold. Then if you go down to the cusp, the second cusp of the second house, you see that one's light. And then the third cusp is light. And then the fourth cusp, very, very bold. So you'll see 4 bold cusps around the ecliptic. Those are the 4 angles. And the houses following them, 1, 4, 7, and 10, those are the strong angles. And most of your information you will find in those angles because they deal with now time, you see, now. Whereas the succedent houses, the 2nd, the 5th, the 8th, and the 11th, they're dealing with the past. Wait a minute. Hang on, let me just make sure I've got that right. No, the future, okay? The succedent are dealing with the future, and the angular are dealing with the past. Okay, slight diversion there, but I'm trying to fill in all the information. It might be a little bit fast at first listen, but if you're taking notes and if you have a second listen at this once the audio is released, then it will make a lot more sense. I'm trying to go slow and repeat a few things so that we don't lose vital information here. Now, continuing on from the 4th house down at the bottom, where 6 o'clock is, still going anti-clockwise, we come to the 4th house. That's an angular house. Then the 5th one, where Casanova has 3 planets, very interesting, in the 5th house. That's a succedent house. Then the 6th is a cadent house again, a very weak house. Now we've come to the DC cusp, the 7th house, the descendant, where the sun sets. So that's the 7th house, that's an angular house. The 8th house is succedent. The 9th house is cadent. Then we come to the MC. Now this cusp is the 10th house. And this is where a lot of information is found about the native's career, etc. That's an angular house, the 10th house. The 11th is succedent, and the 12th is cadent. So as you go, starting from the 1st house again at 9 o'clock, 1st house angular, 2nd succedent, 3rd cadent, 4th house angular, 5th succedent, 6th cadent, 7th house angular, 8th succedent, 9th cadent, 10th house angular, 11th succedent, 12th cadent. Okay, so the first angles deal with now, the succedent ones with the future, and the cadent have to do with the past and hidden things, anything that is hidden and secret. Okay? So, let's have a look at the meanings of the houses now, just quickly, starting from the 1st house at 9 o'clock, going anti-clockwise. 1st house, always look at numerology. The 1st house is the number 1. The number 1 is you. You are the number 1. And you are the one starting out on your path. So the 1st house has to do with number 1. You, your body, your physical health, your appearance, your inclinations and dynamics and energies, your way of interacting with the world, If there's a happy planet there like Jupiter, you will be known as a happy, magnanimous person. If a sour planet like Mars or Saturn is there, that will come through in the personality. And also depending on the sign that is there. Casanova has Scorpio. Scorpio is ruled by Mars. This man was definitely of high intelligence. Scorpio gives high psychic intelligence, and it gives action. Mars. So he was an action go-getter. Scorpio is a very powerful sign for the ascendant. So number 1 is you. Number 2, the second house. 2 doubles. So doubling has to do with wealth and means of acquiring wealth and substance and gaining things. See, jumping from the first house to the second house, you have already just doubled. The number 2 is a doubling. It's also a dividing, which means your spoils can be divided. You can lose wealth if you have bad planets in this house. They can be divided and taken away from you. But if you have good planets and good signs in this house, and everything is healthy and good, and the planet is receiving good aspects, like a trine or something like that, you can rest assured that a lot of doubling will happen in your life. So, number 2 has you and something else. So you and your prosperity in it. Number 3, the third house. Third house has to do with communication. So here you are now. You are with your brothers and sisters. It's the house of your brothers and sisters and your neighbours and kin and your communication and education. Why? Well, because 3 is a crowd. Communication. You see, when you look at the signs as number 1, the first house rather, if you look at them as number 1 Aries and number 2 Taurus and number 3 Gemini, let's stop and have a look at it that way. So we've looked at it numerologically. The first house is 1, so it deals with you because you are the 1. The second house is 2, doubling, therefore, possessions and what you can acquire in life. The third house is, well, company, your brothers and sisters, and communication. Let's see how that works if we connect them up with the signs now. Well, Aries, what's the motto of Aries? I am. So the first house, the ascendant, Aries, dealing with number 1, you, and I have. I am. So you're going to be dealing with I am in the first house, because you don't want to be dealing with any other motto. It's what you are. So it describes what you are. Taurus, the motto is I have. So quite suitably, it suits the second house. It's what you have. Gemini, 2 twins, one talking to the other, communicating, is the sign of communication, the third house, how you communicate. If Saturn is there, it means you're a stern communicator. If Jupiter is there, it means you're a very loquacious communicator. Or Mercury, for instance. If you've got Mercury in the first house, you'll be a chatterbox. And very, very loquacious with your neighbours and kin and brothers and sisters. Okay, so always apply numerology to the houses and always apply the astrological signs to the houses to understand their true meaning. Okay? Now we come to number 4. Number 4 is one of those angular houses. Again, very strong, very powerful. It has to do with your home. Number 4 is the home. And, well, not just the home, it deals with your roots, your house, your ancestry, your environment. It also really has to do with your father. Now, a lot of astrologers say it has to do with the mother, but you can find information about your mother there, but predominantly it's the house of your father's family, okay? But certainly your family. This is where you'll find a lot of information there about family. Now, the fifth house, the house of pleasure and love affairs and all those sort of things, enjoyment, entertainment, games, love, romance, your expression, self-expression, how you enjoy pleasure in life. Children also. It's the house of children and your relationships with your children. It shows you how you actually relate with your children. Again, if Saturn is in that fifth house, you're a stern parent, very disciplined. Discipline is very important to you. You know, if you've got Venus in there, you're probably very, very, you spoil your children and just give them excessive love, sometimes too much indulgent love. Certainly it doesn't have to be a negative thing. It depends on whether Venus is badly aspecting, whether she's retrograding, or whether she's in a sign that she doesn't like. But certainly Venus loves the fifth house. And we'll get to that. We'll find which planets like which houses. But the fifth house is one of the beautiful houses. Opposite is the 11th, and that's the house of friends. And so this axis here is one of the happy axes. Of the succedent signs, the 5th and the 11th, this is where you want planets. If you're going to have planets outside of the angles, you want them in either the 11th or the 5th house. That's what Firmicus Maternus says. This is where much good comes in the chart. Pleasure and friends. The 5th house is pleasure. Opposite is friends. Okay, the 6th house. The 6th house has to do with illnesses, predominantly, and how you work. It has to do with work, and especially subordinates and co-workers, lower-ranking ones, servants, and ones that are working under you. It shows you whether you're a tyrant or whether you're a good boss. And it shows you a lot about how you work, but in particular, it's a place where illness is to be found and sickness in the chart. And if many planets are found here, many troubles and setbacks occur in the native's life. It's not a very good house. It's the second weakest house. Opposite, the 12th house, is the weakest house, and certainly one that you don't really want many planets to be in. Not always bad, but usually it is. But when it's good, it's good. They can also bring great things. And of course, it always depends on a proper, holistic, thorough reading of the charts, where all things are considered. Because a lot of astrologers, view one thing and put a lot of emphasis on one thing. Whereas, they could have included other mitigating circumstances or other factors which change that essential meaning of a certain configuration in the chart. So usually if you find one thing in the chart, it can be mitigated by another aspect in the chart. But if there's 3 or 4 times you find the same message in the chart from different areas, well then you know that there's not going to be much mitigating going on. Okay? So you might find a bad planet in the 6th house where that will affect the native's health, and then over the road in the ascendant there might also be something pertaining to health which weakens the chart, then, by seeing many areas where the health is attacked, you can quite accurately see that health is going to be an issue. So you don't just take one isolate and base your whole reading on that. Okay, so this is what we're going to learn how to do more comprehensive reading. Let's continue on. The seventh house. Okay. The first six houses are below the horizon, and they are the personal houses. They have to do more so with you.
Santos? Hello? Is it just me who is losing Santos? Lisa, are you having also the same problem?
Me too, the houses. And the seventh house has to do with predominantly your marriage mate, your partner, long-term partners, short-term partners, business associates, business partners, how you contract with people. Yes? Oh, okay.
No, I could hear him fine the whole time.
Yeah, I could too. But some in the chat are saying the chat folks are had troubles too.
So I don't know what part they missed.
All right. Well, what I'll do is I'll just do some light talking. I won't troop march along too frantically. I'll just chat like this for now, and you can give me feedback as to whether this sounds good. I've gone to a different room because outside there are motors and whippersnippers and everybody. Or should I move again?
It sounds even better than it did before, and it sounded fine to me before, so it sounds wonderful to me.
Yeah, and from the chat they said you are back and they can clearly hear you. They said they missed most of the seventh house discussion. Ooh, and I got another perfect. They said you sound good, so I think you're okay.
All right. Well, look. Well, let's persevere for now with this. I'm in a quieter room, but anyway, let's see how we go. Just let me know. I'll keep the chat open, and you can let me know by typing to me in the chat in the next few minutes. I'll continue on. The seventh house being opposite the first one having to do with you, and so opposite now is you and your partners, business partners, marriage partners, contracts, etc., etc. Also here you can find information about your spirituality. It's very, very connected to the ninth house, and it has information about your spirituality. So continuing on, the eighth house. The eighth house is one of those very interesting houses. It has an eclectic meanings. Usually it has to do with death and transformation because it's the eighth house. 8 is double death. 4 is the number of death, and 8 is 2 times 4. So really we know the number 8, the eighth sign is Scorpio,
The number 8 has to do with transformation, because it's an eternal, endless number, and where death and transformation is always occurring. So you can find a lot of information here about how one is able to shut doors and open them anew with new powers of transformation. Great transformative powers are here. It also represents inheritances, money earned by other people. So, a dead uncle leaves you $500,000. This is where you'll find out whether you're going to, have some kind of an inheritance come your way. It also has to do with things hidden, as in the occult. It shows you whether the individual has occult powers, of deep insights into the occult. Sexuality, power. It's a sign of power too. This is where strong planets can bring the native great powers, and very, very unusual bohemian type powers are associated with this particular house. The 9th house has to do with visions, dreams, spirituality, religion, philosophy, and long distance travel. So here you'll find out about faraway travels and whether you will do well if you take a long trip to a foreign country, or whether you should probably just be satisfied with short trips because you have badly aspected planets in this house. Okay, so that's the 3rd quadrant. We come to the 10th house. The 10th house is the midheaven. This is the 2nd most important house in the chart reading, second to the 1st house, the ascendant. So the ascendant and the MC. Now the MC gives you information about career, honours, degrees, distinctions, power, fame, glory, all of that stuff. So big planets, big career, big fame. And it also has to do with the mother, which is opposite the 4th house, which, remember, we said had to do with the father. Okay? And then we come to the 11th house. This is friends, and basically friends, good things too. It's related to, doing things in group. It has to do with humanitarian topics as well. It's one of the friendly houses. It's on the axis with the 5th house, directly opposite, which is a positive house. So friends, acquaintances, people of like-minded attitudes, even groups, clubs, societies, associations. And it also has to do with one's positive emotions, like hopes and wishes and good things. It's a very, very healthy house. You really do want as many planets as possible to be in there if they're not in the angles. The 11th house, it's just one of those beautiful houses, and it really does bring great gifts to the native. 12th house, again, that's a cadent sign. Cadent means falling, cadere, and it means weak. And so here, all the cadent signs have to do with hidden things. And so this is dealing with hidden enemies. So prisons and institutions, prisons is where you're locked away. Private has to do with private things, fears, anxieties, mostly unpleasant things in the 12th house. Mystery and mysticism. It also, can relate to deep hidden knowledge, hence mysticism. So, if you've got a planet like Neptune in the 12th house, that's going to provoke very deep mysticism in the individual. And a lot of astrologers glean information from past lives, from the 12th house, because the 12th house is your past, completes all the past life energy, and the first house, which is right next to the 12th house, is dealing with the now of today, of you now, the number one. All right, so let's have a read now. We've looked at all the houses and their meanings, just briefly. I'd love to be able to elaborate more, but let's go and have a look at Casanova's chart then, and we shall see how both signs and planets in the various houses have made this particular famous individual of history, an Aryan man with a Sagittarian moon, very fiery, obviously, Scorpio ascendant. Those three combinations make one very, very hot, fiery, very precise, good intuition and intelligence. Already just being an Aryan is all about intuition because the fire signs are intuitive. Now you'll notice Casanova has a grand trine in his chart, an Earth grand trine. That's the blue equilateral triangle in the chart pointing to all the Earth signs. Down the bottom, Capricorn and Saturn at the bottom of the grand trine, pointing up to Pluto in Virgo and Neptune in Taurus. Both right on the cusp too, by the way, which is very interesting because Casanova has 3 planets on the 28th and 29th degree. And that's very, very unique and peculiar because the 29th and 28th degrees, these are the weakest degrees in the chart. They are weak. The last degrees are always the weakest. The first ones are the strongest. And so it's very, very interesting because those are on the cusp and they're transitioning. They're passing through a cusp area in the middle of 2 signs. Gives you a lot of, gives those planets a lot of flavor. Gives them the flavor of 2 neighboring signs. So a lot of mixture of energies in this man. You know, it's very rare to have even one planet on the 29th degree, but he's got 3 on the 28th and 29th degree, so it's quite unique. But that Earth trine, that would give Casanova, that would give him a lot of sensuality. You see where his sensuality comes from? He was known as a very sensual man. He had many, many love affairs, and in particular with aristocratic women. He was able to seduce many women. This was his trick. He was a great seducer. And we'll see a lot of where that comes from when we get to the 5th house, the house of pleasure and love affairs and sexual relations and etc. But just looking at the 1st house now, you see he has Uranus rising. Uranus in the ascendant. Well, Uranus is the rebel. Now, other people in history who have Uranus in the 1st house, James Dean, Che Guevara, rebels. I also have Uranus in the 1st house. Very unorthodox, revolutionary, rebellious, eccentric, bohemian, unusual, ahead of their time. These are individuals who are way ahead of their time, Uranian people. Uranus is the heavens. So there was much of a sort of a heavenly flavor about this guy, Casanova. Uranus in the 1st house made him very eccentric, very unusual, but altruistic. Usually, if the planet is not retrograding, as you can see, Uranus has got a little R next to it. Well, that means it's retrograding. That's not pure good energy. That's a sort of a impure energy from a planet when they're retrograding. They don't really give their true light. They give a different angle of their light. They give more sort of the negative side of their light when they're retrograding. Retrogrades have to do with repeat lessons, usually. Repeating, just generally has to do with setbacks, perhaps in the life, obstacles, etc. So here we have it. He has a Uranus retrograding in his first house in Scorpio. So you can imagine that he's going to have some very, very eccentric and unusual experiences in life with many setbacks. And of course, he was imprisoned many times. He was caught. He was troubled. He went from rich to poor. He went from woman to woman, womanizing, but a great seducer. Second house. Now, the moon in the second house, usually that is going to be good for money. But as you can see, the moon is receiving some bad angles. It's part of a T-square. You see the red triangle that is pointing to the moon and then opposite to Neptune, and then at 90 degrees to Mars. Well, this is called a T-square. So although he has a kite and a grand trine in his chart, he also has a negative counterpart, and that would be a T-square. So sure, having the moon in the second house will bring money and wealth in the second house, but again, not all is good, because the moon is very, very uncomfortable with her T-square there. Obviously, there's going to be some friction, some losses, but more good than bad, I would say, because it's a nocturnal chart, which means that Casanova was born at night. He was not born with the sun above the horizon. You can see there the sun in the sixth house is set already. It's 8 p.m. So the moon rejoices in nocturnal charts, as does Venus and Mars. Whereas the other three planets, Mercury, Saturn and Jupiter, they rejoice with nocturnal charts. So more positive than negative for Casanova. The Moonie will bring him money in the second house for sure. And she's also receiving a beautiful trine from the sun, the moon. You see that nice trine from the sun. That's good. That's going to be healthy for the moon. If that was not there, it wouldn't be so good for Casanova when it comes to money. Now, third house, you've got Saturn in the third house. Now, this man is obviously very practical because he's got Saturn in Capricorn. Well, that's 5 points of essential dignity. He's got a very, very happy Saturn, really. Saturn loves Capricorn, which means his communication, he would have been a very deep communicator, because Saturn is, well, the darkest and the deepest. He's the lord of occult wisdom, you see. Now, for Saturn to be in the third house, it gives you information about how this man was educated and how he communicates. It's the house of communication. So probably a very stern, disciplined communicator. So keep that in mind, because other things in the chart reveal a lot about how this man used his tongue and lips. Okay, so, but here's one indicator, Saturn in the third house. So if he did have brothers and sisters, again, he was probably the eldest, and he was probably the role model, and he was probably the the sort of like the older, acting like the older brother, and communicating in such a way as to make his brothers and sisters and siblings feel as though they were his, underlings. So I would suggest with Saturn in the third house. Okay, moving on to the fourth house, you see Jupiter there in Pisces. Well, again, that's another domicile, so another 5 points of essential dignity for Casanova. That's 10 points of essential dignity already. That's pretty powerful, very powerful, in fact. So he's got a good chart of essential dignity. Now, Jupiter in the fourth house, the home, this would have given him some great energy when it came to his home life. He would have been very prolific and very productive in the home. When you have Jupiter in the fourth house, it's probably you are a lover of your home. You love being indoors. You're good. You're productive, prolific. You get a lot done. He's got a very good Jupiter there, really, next to Mars, conjunct Mars. So Jupiter is very strong in Pisces. Mars is also very strong in Pisces because Mars is the triplicity ruler of water. And so that combination there is very, very, very strong. Casanova would have gotten great militaristic and martial and action gifts in his chart. Whenever you see Jupiter and Mars conjunct like that in good houses and good signs, very healthy. This makes for generals and consuls and people of high rank in society, just known to be achievers and successful. Whatever they put their hand to, they can do. So you see that there is greatness in this man's chart. It's inescapable. Now, when you come to the fifth house, the house of pleasure, you'll notice something very, very telling about this individual. First of all, there's two conjunctions. One of Venus and Mars, which whenever Venus and Mars are conjunct, the individual has a strong sexual drive, sexual urge, sexual nature. It's inescapable. Mars and Venus will always bring sexual energy to the native. But also it brings trouble. Mars and Venus, in other words, Mars is a malefic, so it disturbs the energy of the lover. The lover is Venus. She wants love. She's the girlfriend, the wife, the woman. And so having Mars and Venus conjunct is good for the sexual drive, but not for the relationship. There will always be bitter and acute arguments. Situations of fighting, aggression, etc., etc. Now, Venus, though, is also conjunct Mercury, and this is a very divine conjunction. They're all good, actually. Jupiter conjunct Mars was great for his chart. Mars conjunct Venus is also excellent with a few negatives. But Venus and Mercury, this is one of my favorite conjunctions. Whenever I see Venus and Mercury conjunct, I just rejoice. Because the natives have great linguistic communicative skills. They are intellectuals, they have good minds, very good, loving, flowing thoughts. Mostly they are kind with their tongues. I find that they are very smooth, they're charmers, good salesmen, very good salesmen. Mercury conjunct Venus. So here you can see Venus rejoices in Pisces. She exalts in Pisces, so there's another 4 points of essential dignity. Mars is the triplicity ruler of water, so he gets 3 points. So there's 17 points of essential dignity, plus the sun is in Aries. That's another exaltation. That's another 4 points. So Casanova has 21 points of essential dignity. I mean, this is extraordinary, extraordinary. And so, again, he has a very, very strong Venus. She loves Pisces, and she's the happiest in the 5th house. So positives for Casanova, and all of that action in the 5th house there. He truly, truly was a man destined to charm people and to swing in the high echelons of society and enjoy much pleasure. And, of course, he had a lot of setbacks too, did a lot of jail time and had to, be a fugitive here and there, escaping from monarchs and kings, and got into all sorts of trouble. Now, that comes from the sun in the 6th house. Moving along. Sun in the 6th house really does not bring much good. Makes you domineering in the workplace, makes you unhealthy if the sun is badly aspected. Here, Casanova has a well-aspected sun, so probably didn't suffer a lot of health. But again, sun in the 6th house brings a lot of detriment to the natives. Sometimes it can bring a short life. It can bring setbacks and great sicknesses. So there is a scary place. That's probably the first scary thing that you will find in Casanova's chart, that unfortunate sun setting in the 6th house at 8 p.m. Yeah, this is why when procreation and making families was practiced in the past, there was always a good, reliable astrologer to consult so that the child, the native, would be induced to be born at the right time. And usually astrologers preferred, 9 to midday for a child to be born, because then the sun would be in the 11th or the 10th house, which would bring many, many auspicious and divine gifts to the native. All right, moving along, the 7th house has to do with relationships and partners. Well, look, the cusp is pointing to Taurus, and the ruler of Taurus is Venus, and Venus is in the house of pleasure. So you can see how interconnected Casanova's 7th house of relationships is to his the ruling planet Venus and pleasure. Again, everywhere in this chart, the man is dealing with pleasurable relationships. Really, he was truly blessed in this particular way. Now, let me see what my notes are saying. I'm just watching the chat. Okay, I'm good. I've got no complaints that my audio is breaking up. So I'll just continue, guys. So continuing on, so we see there that the North Node is in the 7th house. Now, the North Node has an energy of Venus and Jupiter put together, the two benefics. So again, North Node in Taurus, the sign of I have and material gain, and in the 7th house. And also you can see that Neptune is on the cusp of the 7th and the 8th house. So we can easily slip Neptune in there. So you see Neptune is the
We lost Santos, friends. I don't know why, but we lost him. I'm going to try to reconnect again, so please bear with me. Something to do with their connection. Lisa, Andrea, can you hear me? Are you there?
Yep.
Hello, Santos, we lost you.
How long ago?
Oh, a few seconds, just a few seconds.
Oh, that's all right. Oh, that's all right. So, did I discuss Taurus in the 7th house? Had I yet discussed Taurus in the 7th house?
Yes, I think yes, exactly in that point we lost you.
Yeah, all right. So I was around there. I'll just elaborate a little bit more about the meaning of the 7th house. So I did say if in case that I dropped off and I was talking about the North Node in the 7th house, the North Node has a great energy, Rahu. No mistake, it's called Rahu in the Jyotish Vedic Hindu astrology. Rahu is Ra, and the North Node has the energy of Venus and Jupiter, the two benefics, mixed together. So the man was certainly going to have some very, very rich relationships. Okay. Now, the 8th house, there you can see Neptune in the 8th house, giving gifts of deep esoteric science to this man. And so Neptune is quite a high-vibrating planet, bringing many gifts, esoteric and deep gifts to the individual known as Casanova. The 9th house, we see how the 9th house has to do with religion, dreams, and spirituality, and the ruler, and Cancer is there, and the ruler of Cancer is the moon, and the moon is in the 2nd house. So wealth is associated with Casanova's 9th house, the wealth of the moon in the 2nd house, because Cancer is in that 9th cusp. So you see how the nature of Casanova's spirituality would be very moon-like, very sensitive, very intuitive, very high-tuned, very churchy too. Moon is church, and so there you can glean information about the type of spirituality of Casanova. Leo in the midheaven, the roaring lion, big career, big promises from Leo in the 10th house, and of course detriment as well, because the sun, which is the ruler of Leo, is in the 6th house, very weak. So that was going to bring some negatives for Casanova. He would have shone in one instance and then fallen, to the depths of depravity, possibly in his career path. Moving on, Pluto in the 11th house. Pluto is quite revolutionary, so I dare say that Casanova had very, very many revolutionary and profound and destructive types of friends with a lot of power. He must have had, friends in circles of high power, and who had power of, of life and death, you could say, with Pluto there in the 11th house. So, again, stressing that this man must have had some very, very, very exotic and deep and transformative types of relationships. Sorry, I got the dogs barking around me. And finally, the 12th house, which is dealing with enemies, the opposite of friends. As you can see, there are no planets there, but Libra is there. Libra, justice. And so I imagine that he would have got his just desserts when it came to enemies. Enemies would have, meted out justice. to him in a very, very balanced way. So there's very, very quickly the chart of Casanova. We've seen how the planet placements have really defined this man right to a T. So anyway, next time we do this, we will probably go for another famous person, maybe someone like Marilyn Monroe, Elvis Presley, I don't know. But that's the best way to do it, folks. When you punch in a famous person's birth chart details, you will get Astro Theme pop up. And Astro Theme is probably one of the best ones to study someone's chart, because you can scroll down and it will describe it to you house by house. Okay, so there we go. Question and answers, guys.
Wow.
I'm out of the chat. I have to get back in because my computer restarted, and then when I dropped off, Andrea dropped off at the same time.
All right, friends. So question time. Lisa and Andrea, they're going to be taking questions from the chat room, and I'm going to be adding any person calling via the telephone, and
hang on, guys, just be one tick.
Sure.
Just one tick.
Sure, Santos. Don't worry. I'm going to be adding any person calling using the telephone line and Skype. The telephone to ring to join for questions is 1971-533-7838. The time to call is now. So if you have any question, please join us. For Skype, you can use astrotheologyradio.com. This is our Skype ID. So, how are questions going there in the chat room?
We have one so far.
Yeah, that's it.
Have you seen it?
I didn't write that one down. Did you?
I've got it. All right. It's from Zingara. She has, when Santos gets back on, she wants to know, what exactly does it mean if there are no planets in a house? Which is a good question, because there are several that I have no planets in.
Yes.
I was wondering the same thing.
Hi, guys. Sorry, I just had to attend to something. Got some visitors, so I'm good now.
Welcome back.
Yep. Sorry.
Okay. Okay, we have a question in the chat from Zingara. Zingara wants to know, what exactly does it mean if there are no planets in a house?
Okay, well, it usually means that there's no specific duty in this lifetime or change of dynamic to that house, because that's not where the natives' work needs to be done. So, but it doesn't mean that there's nothing to be learnt from that house, because it will be pointing to a sign, and that sign will tell you what you need to know about the house, regardless of whether there is a planet or not. The sign is there. There will always be a sign. And where that cusp is pointing to, it's where the arrow's pointing. If the arrow's pointing to a sign, that sign will give you information about that cusp house. Okay, so let's have a look at Casanova's. Now, for instance, he does not have any planet in the 9th house, and the 9th cusp is pointing to Cancer. So, but what it tells you, though, is that the ruler of Cancer is the moon, and Jupiter exalts in Cancer. So those are two planets that can tell you information about the 9th house. So you have a look at the condition of the moon first, and then Jupiter, and you find out what houses they are in, and it will tell you how
that person expresses his spirituality through the sign and its rulers and where the rulers are. So in Casanova's case, the moon is in the second house. The second house has to do with wealth and prosperity and how you gain things. So that is intrinsically connected to his ninth house, where the moon is. You see, you got to. So if there's no sign, if there's no planet in the house, have a look at where the ruler of the sign is. Okay, the sign that's in the house. And that will tell you. For example, again, Casanova, his seventh cusp is pointing to Taurus. No planets really in that house. But the ruler of Taurus is Venus, and Venus is in the fifth house, which is pleasure. So you'll see that Casanova is going to get his partners, is likely to get all of his partners, mostly, from his pleasure activities. So the more balls he goes to, the more parties and festivities he goes to where their pleasure is, the more he will get partners, because that's where the energies come from. If Venus was in the 10th house, well, he would get his partners from his career, his job. If Venus were in the 11th house, he would find partners from amongst his friends. So he'd go and visit a friend, and the friend would introduce him to someone who would eventually become his partner. So if you want to know where to find your partner, go to the 7th house cusp, look at the sign that's there, and find out where the ruler of that sign is. And that will tell you where you need to go to find your partners, whether you need to stay at home, whether you need to go to the workplace, whether you need to go out to balls, whether you need to go or looking around in the neighbourhood, etc., etc. So there's plenty of information. Even though the houses are empty of planets, there's plenty of information to glean. First of all, the first thing is the sign. The sign will tell you 50% of what you need to know. The other information you will get from looking where the ruler of that sign is. Okay?
Excellent.
Wow. I'm blown away.
It's good to know.
I need to listen to this like 3 times. I couldn't write fast enough. We have a question from Teresa. She says, I have 6 planets in my 7th house, 5 in Leo, 1 being my north node. What am I supposed to be paying attention to here?
Well, if you've got 6 planets in your 7th house, I think I've got 5. It's a very strong house. It's very good. You're first of all, it's positive because when you do horary astrology, which is questions, when you're asking questions and getting answers, when the planets are in the strong angles, your questions will be answered with positive things. So that's great for you to have 6 planets in the 7th house. It will mean, though, that you are very reliant on partners. You know, you need that support. Probably very difficult for you to do things on your own, solo. If you had 6 planets in the first house, you're all solo. You know, you're all independent and self-reliable, and you just shut other people out. But having so much in the 7th house means you really need a good partner, a good husband, a good wife, a good lover. And you need, some commitment from them, and you need to give them your commitment.
Your life is revolving around that, what the partner can do to help you. You know, you do things in tandem, together, and you will achieve much success through partner. So don't treat them badly. Don't underestimate them. Work with them. And also, depending what planets are there. You said the North Node is there. Well, you couldn't have better. Wherever the North Node is, it brings treasures and great, great things. You know, it gives divine gifts in that house. So you're going to have, sooner or later, you will have a very, very special relationship. You know, either early in life or later in life, but somewhere you will definitely have something very, very special if you have so many, you know, good planets in the 7th house.
Wow.
All right.
That's good for her to know. Yeah.
Yep.
I have a question, and this might be a stupid question, but I'm looking at his chart and knowing he was such a lover. Why doesn't he have any planets in the 8th house of Scorpio?
Okay. Well, hang on. What do you mean? The 8th house?
Well, that's Scorpio, and
yep.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, the 8th house does correspond with Scorpio because it's the 8th sign, but he does have a planet there. He's got Neptune.
Oh, that's right. I thought that was in Taurus, or not in Taurus. See, that's where I'm getting confused with reading that. I see Neptune, and then it says, oh, because Taurus is in the 8th house. Okay.
Yeah. Well, it's
Okay.
on the cusp of the 7th and the 8th. So Taurus being earthy, it's sensual, and Neptune is a principled love planet. It's not sexual. Oh, it is. It is too, but it has a higher octave. It's a more noble kind of a love too, altruistic, and so Neptune combined with Taurus in the 7th house on the cusp of the 8th. When a planet is on the cusp, like that, of the houses, you can put them in either house. So Neptune can go in the 8th and it can go in the 7th, okay? You can get a reading from Neptune in the 7th and you can put him in the 8th because it's right on the cusp. So that particular placement of Neptune there in Casanova's chart can be read for the 7th or the 8th house, okay? But it's interesting because it's right on the cusp of the 7th and the 8th house, and it's also right on the cusp of Taurus and Gemini. It's a very unusual planet there.
Yeah, that's what threw me. I just couldn't understand that. Did you see any more questions, Andrea?
Teresa did mention that her node is retrograde, or her node, yeah, is the node retrograde, or it's moving in Leo retrograde in her 7th house? What is that?
No.
What does that do when you're?
It's always retrograde, okay? Because it's an 18-year cycle. It goes backwards through the ecliptic every 18 years. So it's always retrograding. Well, pretty much always. Very, very rarely is it not. You know, it's very, very rare. But usually that's the North Node is going backwards. Looks like in Casanova's it's not. But nonetheless, I wouldn't. It's the North Node is very, very strong and positive. It's the most positive item in the chart, and I would say it's on a par, if not more powerful than Jupiter for positive gifts. All right.
I am surprised there is no more questions, such as An interesting subject. So rich. So, friends,
I know.
where are your questions? Oh, there it is.
You want to read that one, Andrea?
Okay. This one's from Zingara again. What does the node in the 7th house mean? Can you, I think she wants to know what the north nodes are. Can you explain further? As I think this was in Casanova's chart, no marriages or partners.
Yeah, no. As I said, it has the energy of Venus and Jupiter together, the two benefics. So it's a combined good force for good. Great gifts. Where your north node is, when the moon is transiting your north node, that is a very, very powerful and lucky day. So, and you have 12 of these every year, 13 really, 13 of these very, very lucky days when the moon is transiting your north node. So wherever the north node is, it brings great gifts. So Casanova would have had great gifts in terms of relationships. He would have had some really, really good ones because you can't escape it. North node in Taurus. And his north node is not retrograding, which is interesting, because usually it's very rare for the north node not to be retrograding. It's just usually on retrograde all the time, So positive for Casanova. He's got a Taurus north node bringing him a lot of I haveness in his chart, and to be placed in the 7th house would bring him many, good and pleasurable relationships, for sure.
Very good. I just got a question via Facebook from Amy. Hi, Amy. And her question is, I have to ask about these two suns, or is that our 10th planet?
Two suns. Whenever you talk about two suns, I think of it theologically and philosophically. Physical suns, they're not physical two suns. It's there's always in theology there's the sun behind the sun, Mithras, Ahura Mazda and Ahriman and Ahura. And so you always have the good and the bad sun. So there's the physical sun that you see, that's the lowest form of the sun, but inside the sun is the spiritual sun. And as Manly P. Hall puts it, there's always the two suns or the three suns that are spoken about. The spiritual body of the sun, the soul body of the sun, and the physical body of the sun. There's always the Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit. It's always the Trinity, an emanation of the Trinity. Or, you can look at it more simplistically, dualistically, good and evil. Good sun and a bad sun, the dark sun and the bright sun. They call the dark sun the black sun, and they often attribute that to Aten or Saturn. And, the dark brethren and their dark behavior. Now, I don't know whether it's the two suns that was asked about in the question. I think there are people that are claiming that there are two suns in the sky now and they've seen a second one or something. They've said that about the moon. I've never seen any of these things. I've never seen proof of it. So I don't know whether, they're talking about a dwarf sun or something, or a brown dwarf, a giant, or some invisible giant sun that it's near or whatever. But rest assured, it's the sun in the sky that we see that is the primary vital force of all life going on in the solar system. And he is the one. That's why he's called Sol, Solo. And the moon is Mono. Solo and Mono. Sol Invictus and Moon Mono. Okay.
Okay. Yeah, I've been reading about a lot on Facebook about people seeing two suns in the sky and they're taking pictures of it, and I just kind of just didn't really resonate with that. I'm glad you brought that up. Thank you. Any more questions, Andrea? Oh, wait, here's one that says can I don't know what they're talking about. I can't even pronounce the word. Can you want to read that one?
I'll try. Okay, can Santos please talk a little bit about Jyotish, Jyotish astrology, if it is more accurate? Have you heard of that, Santos?
Yeah. Jyotish is Hindu or Vedic. Now, Vedic is not accurate, and Hindu is not accurate when you're talking about sidereal Eastern astrology. The most appropriate term is Jyotish. Jyotish means, and you might want to get a pen because this will blow your mind, means the science of light. And that's, of course, what astrology is. Jyotish means astrology, the science of light. Now, I've pointed out in my work that astrology means the word of God. Logos, the word, astro is light, God is light, hence astrology means the word of God, the word of light. And that's exactly what Jyotish means. Now, Jyotish, please understand that what I'm doing here and what I'm teaching with syncretism is Western tropical astrology because it's based on the tropical signs. In other words, Aries will always occupy the first 30 degrees of the ecliptic. In Jyotish astrology, however, because they follow the precessional slippage, the stars and the constellations have slipped along the ecliptic. Every 2,000 years they slip 30 degrees until all the constellations retrograde all the way around the circle in 25,920 years, the precessional cycle. So in the East, the Hindu astrology or Vedic astrology, which is accurately called Jyotish, the science of light, they follow the constellations instead of the ecliptic. Now, as to the accuracy of it, I don't want to make any comments because I've had Vedic astrologers do my chart and they claim that they get a lot of accuracy. Now, I don't want to discount that. All I want to say is that tropical astrology is 100% accurate. And we need to shut the mouths of Jyotish astrologers who criticize and attack Western tropical astrology once and for all. Please send them my videos to learn the true science. Because Aries will always be 30 degrees long, even though the constellation's only 22 degrees. So if you're going to be going by sidereal astrology for accuracy, let it be known that not one of the 12 signs is exactly 30 degrees long in the sky, but it is on the ecliptic. The ecliptic is perfect, and that is where tropical astrology is born from. It's born from the tropics. In other words, the equinoxes and the solstices. So when the equinox happens on March the 21st, that is the day the sun enters Aries, regardless where Aries is off on the ecliptic. Regardless, it doesn't matter. If Aries is now occupying the space where Pisces is, and it's slipped, because when you do go into your sky watches and your smartphones and you use all of those sky watching applications, what they're showing you is where the planets are on the ecliptic in real time. But then when you go to your tropical astrology sites, you'll find that it's telling you that the planets are in different signs. And so you think, but hang on, it's wrong. Astrology is wrong. No, it's not. Because astrology knows its true secret, and its secret is that the planets are in the signs on the ecliptic, not in the skies, because those are always subject to change. Tropical astrology never, ever, ever changes. Nothing changes. Aries is always found in the same spot on the ecliptic, and that is the first 30 degrees. Taurus will also be 30 degrees long, and it will occupy from 30 degrees to 60 degrees on the ecliptic. Then Gemini will occupy from 60 degrees to 90 degrees on the ecliptic. That's where they live. The constellations live on the ecliptic. Regardless of where the planets are in real time, in your, fancy computer applications, all of them will show you where the planets are sidereally. They won't show you where they are tropically, because they're not dealing with astrology, they're dealing with astronomy. They're giving you the facts in real time. They're showing you, for instance, right now, the sun is not in Aquarius. When you go to your fandangled internet applications, you will find that the sun is still in Capricorn, as the Jyotish siderealists will vouch for. Okay? But that matters not, because the sun, although it appears to be in Capricorn, is actually in Aquarius on the ecliptic. And I need to stress this. Everything goes by ecliptics. Everything. All light particles obey ecliptics. They start at Aries and finish at Pisces. All thoughts, all things, all words, everything does this. Everything is ruled by ecliptics. Unless you bring your mind to this point and meditate on it and get it, you will always be learning and never coming to an accurate knowledge of truth. If you want an accurate knowledge of truth, rule number 1, everything is on the ecliptic. All your information is on the ecliptic. Nothing is not on there. And so the astrology I'm teaching goes perfectly synced with this tropical understanding, this ecliptic understanding, okay? And it's unfailing. The Egyptians have records going back 480,000 years, according to Diodorus Siculus, Celsus, and Iamblichus. Those are the 4 writers in history that tell us that the Egyptians kept records going back 480,000 years. That's 500,000 years of tropical astrological records, 100% reliable and accurate.
I am so glad that you clarify that, Santos. Very important subject. Fascinating.
Yep.
Excellent. Lot of questions.
Yes,
sorry.
Another reason, Ruth, just quickly, is because it's annoying when you see these ignorant people who think that they know everything about astrology, and they can condemn and criticize another system that they don't understand. Before any siderealist can attack tropical astrology, they're going to have to watch my presentations and prove that I'm wrong, because 100% reliability comes from the tropical system. It never fails. It is and I've proven this with medical conditions. The medical points that have been discovered by the Egyptians to be along the ecliptic, they are still in perfect harmony today. And an alchemist can confirm this. They will tell you that when the sun is in Scorpio on the ecliptic, they can transmute iron into gold. Well, if the Jyotish system was accurate, then that would be out of place, and all the alchemists would find that they would have to change their information by 30 degrees, so that they would have to wait for the Scorpio in the skies to line up with the zodiacal sign. And you will find that they won't be able to transmute their metals, because what is 100% accurate is the tropical system. And you can, if you find any alchemist out there that can confirm that, you'll find that for yourself. But if you really want to confirm the accuracy of tropical astrology, go to a medical astrologer and get some
medical astrology books, and you will never have a doubt ever again, ever, for as long as you live.
People hold too dear their information that they gather through years, and that's one of the biggest challenges that humanity is facing, is to clear the road of everything that they have learned, and always leaving the possibility that there is more to it. Lack of humility is really a problem when it comes to obtaining knowledge. At least that's the experience I'm seeing with a lot of researchers, people who are seeking for truth. They hold too dear what they have learned, and it's a challenge for a lot of people. Beautiful clarification, Santos. Thank you. A lot of questions there, so the ladies, Elisa and Andrea, are going to be very busy. Sorry.
I know the chat is hopping. We have a question from Rhonda about Black Moon Lilith. What effect does Lilith have in the 5th house?
Oh, well, it's the dark side, really, Lilith. She's the dark moon, probably associated with Nephthys, the evil sister of Isis. Isis is moon waxing, Nephthys is moon waning. But Lilith, it's sadomasochism, it's sabotage, I guess. It has to do, it does have to do with negatives, and it brings some tricky little dynamics into the house, wherever it is in the house. So I would suggest in the 5th house it would bring some probably some kinky sexual tendencies, maybe a little bit sort of unusual, perhaps eccentric, and some downturns, really. Dark Lilith is, well, it's mainly, dark things, things that are unfortunate and not happifying, I guess. So wherever she is, she'll bring some little tricks. Best way to find out, if it's pronounced in your chart is to look and see where it is in your chart and see how it's affected the meaning, of the house that it's in. And you'll see how strong the dark Lilith is. In some charts it's not really, it's pretty insignificant. It sort of doesn't make an impact, whereas in others it really, really does. It just, asserts itself. And of course that all has to do with, again, aspects, houses, signs that it's in, whether it's in a favourable or not favourable sign. You've always got to look at that. Every planet must be associated with the sign it's in to see whether it's happy or not happy, or struggling or doing well.
Wonderful. Very good. Andrea, you want to read the next one?
Sure. Okay, this is from Teresa. She says she was severely abused as a child, and where would that show up in a chart?
If it comes from your parents, you'll find if it's your dad, you'll find that the sun is in a bad house, like for instance the 8th house or the 6th house or the 12th house. And if, say the sun is conjunct Saturn or squaring or opposing Saturn, that means your trouble, your father, the sun is your father. And so, aggression and violence or misdeeds come through the sun, through the father. If the moon is badly aspected, receiving bad squares in a bad house, for instance, she doesn't like Scorpio and she doesn't like Capricorn, those are detrimental signs to her. And if she's receiving a bad square from, say, Saturn or Mars, then the abuse will be coming through the mother.
because that affects your relationship with the mother. It also can be if you've got excessive planets in the cadent signs, houses. So if you've got a lot of planets in the 12th house or the 6th house, that can usually bring hidden abuse. Hidden abuse comes through the cadent signs. Also, if your personal planets are afflicted, like Mercury and Venus, they're the inner planets, so they're personal, and Mars sometimes is considered to be a personal one, but Jupiter and Saturn, they're more non-personal, they're outer lying and, distant. Whereas you look at your moon, if she's struggling, or Mercury or Venus, and if she's receiving bad aspects, and it depends where those aspects are coming from, So, for instance, if you've got Venus in the first house, badly aspected, receiving a square from, say, the third house, well then that means the abuse is going to come from your brothers and sisters, because the third house is the house of your brothers and sisters. If it comes from the fourth house, it's going to come from your father. If it comes from a square from the 10th house, from your mother. If it's an opposition from directly opposite, say Saturn in the 7th house opposing your Venus in the first house, that means the abuse is going to come from your partner. You see? So have a look at the first house. See if some of your personal planets are suffering, and where they're suffering from. Is it from the direction of the 4th house, your father, or the 10th house, your mother? Okay?
Wow. Oh my gosh, I'm just blown away. We have a question from Flavio, and I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. This question pertains to when you were speaking about alchemy and turning lead into gold on the ecliptic around Scorpio. And he says, is that why Scorpio turns into the symbol of the ego, of the eagle?
Yeah. By the way, it's not lead into gold; it's iron into gold, because Scorpio is ruled by Mars, and the alchemical element of Mars is iron. So again, if you really wanted to test tropical astrology as opposed to sidereal, if you've got an alchemist friend or a good alchemist who knows how to do this transmuting, he will be going by, definitely guaranteed, he will be going by Hermetic Egyptian tropical astrology to transmute his elements. And all you have to do is confirm this with an alchemist, and if you don't have an alchemist friend, you can confirm it with a medical astrologer, because those are the two ways that I've found that you can test the accuracy of astrology, tropical astrology. And there is another way, which I'll mention in a minute. But just to finish that question, yes, the 8th sign, Scorpio, does have the phoenix or the eagle as its secondary symbol, and the phoenix rises from the ashes. 8 is about death and renewal. And the phoenix always rises, because whatever fire destroys, it always makes new. Okay? So the other way of confirming that tropical astrology is 100% accurate, just get the book. It's only about $20 from my friend William Schreiber from America, called Personalities of the Zodiac, and there's a link to his site on my website, and I would recommend you get that book. $20. He's got photos of all the famous people in history and shows how tropical astrology is 100% accurate, because the physical features of the sign are still there on the ecliptic where they should be, 100% accurate, and 100% do they confirm the physical features of the body language and the facial features of every particular sign, every one of them. And they haven't slipped. Really annoys me with Jyotish astrology, because they tell me, like a Virgo will tell me, oh no, I'm a Leo, because they follow Jyotish astrology, and yet they don't look at it all. They look 100% Virgoan, because it never ever fails. Tropical ecliptic never ever fails. The look, no matter whether you're a devotee of sidereal astrology or not, the looks are not corresponding. That I can swear to my own grave, that only tropical astrology can accurately predict the physical features of the native, of the individual. Sidereal astrology is way off. For example, I was born on the 24th of March. In Jyotish astrology, they say I am Piscean. Well, sorry, but I have all the Aryan features, all of them, every single one of them. And I'm even close to the cusp of Pisces, 24th of March. It's only 3 days away. And yet I have all Aryan features intact, 100%, the whole lot of it. The big, long face. The Aryans have these big foreheads with the two little horns at the top, the two little tufts of hair. They have the arched eyebrows like I have, and the fiery eyes, and the long head. The head is prominent. There's no Pisces anywhere near me. What they're actually seeing is my Pisces moon, and I also have Jupiter and Mercury in Pisces. So yeah, I do have a lot of Pisces coming through, but as for the sun sign, I'm Aryan, 100%. 100%. And if you get that book, Personalities of the Zodiac, hang on, let me see if that's what it's called. Dance of the Zodiac. Dance of the Zodiac is the one to get. It shows you the physical traits of the individual. You get that book, and you will never ever look back, and you will know how to read the signs just by looking at their
Santos, just laughing here because I think it was 3 days ago I shared the link at the school Facebook page, the link to that website where you can get that book. I just said that the school has supported for many years the work of William, because you're talking about William, don't you? Santos.
Yep. William Schrock. Bill Schrock.
Yes, he hosted 2 or 3 webinars with us, and we support his work. So just about 3 days ago, I shared a link of his website there. So, very good.
Wonderful. Yeah, keep doing that, because Bill is a beautiful man, and he's always struggling. He might sell 3 or 4 books a week and that, but I know for a fact that he's always struggling. So what a great way to support him. $20 to $30 to get
Absolutely.
the book of all books, which will absolutely confirm beyond any doubt that tropical astrology is 100% accurate, because you can see it for yourself with all the physical features. He has hundreds and hundreds of photos of famous people in there, and he shows how their sun sign mixed with their ascendant sign gives them their look. For instance, Madonna, she's a Leo. You can see she's a feline, but she's got that little gap in the front of her teeth. Well, that's because she's got a Virgo ascendant. And the mutable signs, usually like Virgoans and Geminis, they have that little gap in the front of their teeth. So he explains features like that even, How come she has this little gap in the front of her teeth? Because of her Virgo ascendant. And look, the way he explains astrology, and when I met him 4 years ago and I showed him the ecliptic and how astrology is on the ecliptic, he was blown away. He knew none of that. And yet he was able to, just through observation, write a whole entire book about how to pick people, their ascendants and their sun signs, just by looking at them. And he also teaches how to tell their moon signs, because the moon is the reactive nature and how you react. So, he would do little exercises like scaring someone and forcing them to react to see what kind of a moon they had. If they sort of stood there staunch and steadfast and unmovable, they would probably had a Taurus moon. If they were indecisive and didn't know how to react and thought about it quite a lot, they would probably be a Virgo or a Gemini moon. If they were fiery and retaliatory, probably an Aries moon or a Scorpio moon, Mars, action. So the book is a gem. You'll never tire of reading all the descriptions and explanations there, and it's probably a year-long study, just that one book on its own. So there's the third way of telling that tropical astrology is 100% accurate. Now, at the same token, I don't want to be knocking sidereal astrology, because there are many bodies we're talking about: the physical body, the medical body, the auric body, the astral, the causal, the celestial, the ethereal. And so I'm sure that Jyotish is doing a good job in whatever body they are actually tuned to. They're obviously tuned to something, right? Tropical astrology is definitely tuned to the physical body, medical and physical, and it's also 100% accurate with the spiritual nature, which is the opposite of the physical. So it really deals with those two polarities very, very well. Perhaps Jyotish is dealing with the celestial or the ethereal or the emotional body or other parts, which causes us to have this bipolar, schizophrenic type nature. I'm at a guess. I'm hunching that the sidereal and tropical systems need to be worked together, because what is happening is they separate and go their different ways, and I think this is what's causing the disharmony in mankind on the planet, because the sidereal system working with the tropical system is fractionalizing the nature of the individual. You see, the soul is being torn in two, and one goes one way and one goes the other. Now, this is indicated and hinted in all of the theologies. You see, Jupiter says, I am the one that splits the souls in two, so that the souls will be always seeking their soulmates. You see, and that's the boast that Jupiter makes. Whereas Saturn, his daddy, he has a different job. Whereas Jupiter has the job of dividing the soul. So I do believe that there are some bodies that are probably addressed better with sidereal astrology, and I don't know which ones they are, but believe you me, it's my quest to find out and sort this out once and for all, so that they can be either syncretized or not syncretized. Because the Jyotish system uses the same signs, Aries through Pisces, the same planets and archetypes, Jupiter, Mercury, Mars, etc., but all it's doing is it's out by 30 degrees because they are watching the stars behind the ecliptic. They're not going by the ecliptic, you see. So that's the difference. Now there must be some power in this sidereal system. There must be, because precession is happening. Slippage is happening. Now, what is it doing? Is it tearing man and woman in two, so that the soul is one way and the spirit another, and tropical is good for, telling the spiritual and physical side, whereas sidereal is about the soul? That's how I've had explained it to me by other astrologers who work with both systems. They've said that this is what's going on. Tropical is physical, whereas, sidereal is spiritual. But that can't be 100% true, because tropical astrology also caters for the spiritual. I've proven that. All aspects of the character can be ascertained in tropical astrology. But when you go to sidereal, you find that they're very, very good with intricate things having to do with emotions and soul somehow. They're very, very good with that, and they have a lot of accuracy. Okay, but the thing is, what I do find is that the siderealists are very, very forward in attacking tropical astrology, whereas tropical astrologists don't bother. You never see them attacking sidereal. They don't bother because they're so engrossed in the true science of tropical astrology that they don't need to look elsewhere. It's complete. It has everything you need in it. Okay, and I think that sidereal astrology is not complete. It's not at all. And I think that if you think that you're going to be a doctor and an astrologer, as Hippocrates said, if you are not an astrologer and you call yourself a doctor, you have no right to call yourself a doctor. Now, I think sidereal astrologists are in danger because I don't think you should go sidereally when you're considering medical astrology. You must go along the tropical points. You must use tropical astrology, otherwise you're going to kill someone. If the moon is in, say, in Leo, and you're a doctor and you're practicing sidereal astrology, and you think it's in Cancer, right? Well, that heart is going to bleed to death because the moon is a bleeder, and the moon in Leo will cause the heart to bleed, and so they're going to kill people. I think if they're doing medical astrology, I think sidereal Jyotish astrology should throw out medical entirely, throw it right out. Don't use it at all because it's wrong. And they will have inaccuracies forever because only tropical astrology is medically 100% accurate on those degrees, by degrees. And so whatever it is that they find that works with sidereal astrology, I haven't worked it out yet, but I will be the one to discover it because I've got my antenna out for it, and my heart and mind are intent and focused on syncretizing everything. I'm not going to throw anything out, and everything's welcome on the ecliptic.
Wow. I'm just speechless. Amazing.
Me too.
Oh my goodness. Well, if anyone can syncretize it, Santos can. I don't think anybody else can. I think there was just one. I'm sorry?
I hope so. I really do. Because it's.
Oh, I know so.
Needs doing.
I think there was just one more question. Teresa wanted to know if you'd still do readings.
Look, I do, but I'm not taking any at the moment. If I'm going to do readings, it'll be months down the track. I'm way too busy. I've got many PowerPoint presentations that need to get out really urgently. The atom presentations I've done live with the whiteboard, they're just not cutting it. I'm going to release a massive, extensive PowerPoint presentation based on atom, and I'm getting some graphics done and just finishing it up. And once that's released, and I'm going to re-release the Lamb of God because I've got more additives, more additions to put into that. And I've got about 30 presentations that I've been making over the years that must get out. So however I'm going to do that, I don't know, but that is my top priority. So I won't be doing any chart readings.
Let me help you with the graphics, Santos. This knowledge needs to come out, as I was telling you. And in any way I can help with graphic, just let me know. With your assistance, if you direct me what to do, I'm more than happy to do it.
For sure. Thank you.
Well, we just had one more question come in.
Yep.
Yeah, and Andre, do you want to read the next one? I believe it's from Rhonda.
Sure. Okay. She says we're all born with different influences, but we all work with the same signs on a given day. Isn't each day as important as the day we are in, and we need to work with that also?
Yeah. Look, if you have the time and the patience and the love for astrology, I would be looking at the chart every day. Look at your chart. You should have your chart. You should have about 3 or 4 copies of your chart anyway. You should have one in your favorite astrological book, one on your mirror in the bedroom, another one by your bedside table. So you should always be consulting it, looking at it, deepening your understanding of your chart. And you have it there every day. You pull up the day's chart and you have a look and you see if there's any transits, any conjunctions. In other words, for instance, your moon might be in Pisces, okay? Well, have a look and see if there's anything in Pisces today, or if there's anything squaring that or opposing that point where your planet is. If it's the moon, it's going to be doing with your emotions. If it's the sun that's being afflicted, it's going to be affecting your mind and your thinking. If it's Jupiter, it's going to be affecting your friends and your generosity. If it's Venus that is afflicted, it's going to be your love that's going to be disturbed for the day. Right now, Mercury's retrograding. Well, have a look at what's going on. Arguments, fighting, friction, miscommunications for another 4 days. It's the worst time. Mercury retrograding is nasty. It's all about nastiness. You watch when the 12th comes in 4 days' time, you watch how much nicer and happier and relieved you will be with your relationships and your speaking, and all of a sudden your communication will go from nasty to loving. So, yeah.
Wonderful. I think that's it for the questions. Am I correct?
I think there's one that was a bit earlier from Zingara, but I think that's a pretty good question. Maybe. Let's see. If there's something not so good in your chart, is it predictive for certain, engraved in stone, or can you change it? In other words, can you change something that's not so beneficial?
Oh, that's a good one.
Yeah. Look, you can change things, but you've got to remember that some things are set in stone for your whole incarnation. For instance, if you're 5'4", well then you're 5'4". You can't be 6'4", and that is also in your chart. The physical height and features are in the chart. Even the sex and the color of the skin, whether you're going to be dark or I'm very dark. Well, because second degree Aries, where my sun is what's called dark degrees. The first 5 or 6 degrees of Aries are dark. You see, so they will naturally be darker than the rest of the skin color of the family. And there are also clear degrees and light degrees. Some people have really clear complexions. That's because they had their sun was in clear or white degrees, right? And so my sync rotor wheel contains all of this syncretic wisdom. It contains the male and female degrees, the dark degrees and the light degrees. It's all in concentric rings, and I've prepared it for that reason, so that you have all information you need. And so the chart sets, it's called the radix chart because it's the root. It's your root chart. And those things will never fundamentally change, but they can be altered and improved. And it's like, for instance, your hair colour might be blonde, but guarantee you when you get to 90 years of age it won't be anymore, it'll be grey. So time does change certain features of the chart, but only with effort and awareness. If you're not aware of it, definitely nothing will change. You see these people, 70 years later and they're still the same. They haven't changed. They're still complainers and blah, blah, blah and whatever. Well, first of all, they've never seen their charts to realize that that's how they have been electrically, dynamically being set up, configured by their chart and by the Elohim, the archons, the rulers of the ecliptic, the 7 planets, and of course Neptune, Pluto, and Uranus, and all the other things, but mainly those 7 have the predominant influence over the body. Well, that's in the chart, and because people think that astrology is from the devil and it's a pseudoscience and it's inaccurate and blah blah blah, they never get to experience this great transformation that can be made because they haven't looked at themselves electrically yet and seen what's going on in their electrical organism and where the deficiencies are and where, they are weak or strong and all the dynamics. They don't know, so they're not going to change it. It's like if you're in a house that has got mold and mildew and a musty smell and it's all moldy all the time, and you don't realize that there's a water under your house, there's an aquifer, underground water or something like that, you won't know, what to do to change that dynamic. Water will bring mold. Well, you could probably put something over that water, perhaps some concrete or some natural rocks, or you could shift the house, or you could put an extra insulation in the house, or you could, open the windows and aerate the house. So you won't know how to fix that feature. You won't know how to change the energy of it so that it works better for you. And that's what's going on with astrology. Astrology is the eye-opener. It makes you aware of the energies and how you can immediately set about fixing them, with herbs, crystals, change of mind, change of habits, deliberate and intentful things that you can do, you see. For instance, if you find that you've got a bad 7th house and you're destined to have trouble with partners and you're struggling to find them, well, you can change that because you have a look at the cusp of the 7th house and you find out what sign's in there. Well, you find out that Cancer is there, okay? Cancer is all about silver and water and emotions. So what you might want to do then is you might want to strengthen your energies that have to do with silver in your body. So change it, reconfigure it, give it a bit of a nudge. So you carry some crystals that give extra strength to the silver element, right? And see what happens. Experiment. Yeah, crystals are worlds unto themselves. You carry them around with you and they change the dynamics of your behavior. They change the dynamics of other people's behavior too, you see.